Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a journey, not to the triumphant battlefields or the glorious feasts of Greek mythology, but straight into the often tragic reality behind its most legendary figures. Imagine this: you're standing on a windswept cliff overlooking the Aegean Sea, the salty air biting at your skin. You're a hero, perhaps a prince or a demigod, renowned for your strength, your courage, or your cunning. You've just completed an impossible labor, defeated a terrifying monster, or won a glorious victory. The crowds cheer your name, and the gods themselves acknowledge your deeds. But beneath the ephemeral glory and the divine favor, a grim shadow perpetually looms, for the fate of a Greek hero was almost universally brutal, filled with agony, madness, and often a tragic, premature end. You probably won't survive this without losing an eye, a limb, or your entire family. But we're going to dive into the brutal fate of Greek heroes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling adventurous, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you guys are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself transported back to ancient Greece, a world vibrant with philosophy, art, and democracy, but utterly dominated by its intricate and often terrifying mythology. This wasn't a collection of quaint bedtime stories. For the ancient Greeks, these myths were their fundamental understanding of the cosmos, of human nature, and of the forces that governed every aspect of their lives. Heroes were central to this worldview, larger-than-life figures, often born from the union of gods and mortals, who undertook impossible feats, battled terrifying monsters, and shaped the destinies of cities and kingdoms. Their stories were recited by bards, depicted in art, and performed in tragedies, serving as both inspiration and cautionary tales. The popular image of a Greek hero often conjures up images of unwavering courage, ultimate triumph, and eternal fame. And while Kleos' undying glory was certainly a primary motivation and a cherished reward, the reality of a hero's life was far grimmer, far more desperate, and perpetually shadowed by profound suffering. Your path, as a hero, is not one of easy victories, but of relentless trials, agonizing choices, and inevitable tragedy. You quickly learn that being favored by the gods, or even being their offspring, is a double-edged sword. Divine attention can be a profound curse. Remember that divine lust, dangerous attention from Why Being a Mortal in Greek Myth Sucked. Section 3. And the very strength that enables your triumphs also attracts the jealousies of gods like Hera's unrelenting vengeance from The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 3. And the machinations of cruel fate. Your life is a precious, yet utterly expendable commodity in the cosmic games of the Olympians, turning every heroic deed into a terrifying gamble with your own, often painful, demise. One mainstream historical fact that immediately shatters any romanticized view of Greek heroes is that ancient Greek myths almost universally depict heroes facing exceptionally brutal fates, characterized by profound suffering, madness often divinely inflicted, betrayal, agonizing deaths often violent and ironic, and tragic personal lives, despite their immense strength or divine favor. Their glory was almost always intertwined with immense personal cost and a tragic end. Think about it, your idea of a happy ending probably doesn't involve being flayed alive, or turning into a weeping stone, or accidentally killing your entire family. A particularly quirky tidbit that reflects the Greeks' nuanced, often fatalistic view of heroic destiny is the concept of a hero's post-mortem existence in the underworld. While some heroes achieved a blessed afterlife in the Elysian fields, a rare paradise, remember that from What Hades Was Actually Like. Section 9. Many still lamented their previous vibrant mortal lives, preferring even the lowliest living existence to being a mere shade recall. Achilles' famous lament to Odysseus in Hades, from Section 11 of What Hades Was Actually Like. This suggests that even ultimate glory didn't guarantee eternal happiness, and that the Greeks fundamentally valued vibrant mortal life above all else. Imagine being so awesome that you get into heaven, but you still mostly complain about how boring it is compared to Earth. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of brutal and tragic fates for Greek heroes in mythology was primarily a cultural mechanism for ancient Greeks to explore and grapple with complex ethical dilemmas. Juge, the nature of justice, the limits of free will, the consequences of pride, emphasizing that even the greatest men could not escape suffering and death, or if these narratives also served a sociological purpose, subtly reinforcing the established social order by portraying the dangers of ambition and the inevitable fall of those who challenged the cosmic or social hierarchy. Was it about moral exploration or social control that made heroic fates so tragic? As you prepare for your next great deed, perhaps to battle a monstrous beast or lead an army into war, you feel the familiar surge of adrenaline, but it is tinged with a cold dread. The cheers of the crowd are fleeting, the promise of glory a shimmering illusion against the stark reality of your inevitable suffering. Your strength, your cunning, your very heroism are not guarantees of a happy life, but merely tools to delay, or perhaps even hasten, your predetermined tragic end. You quickly realize that living as a Greek hero is a constant struggle against forces far greater than any mortal enemy, a perpetual battle against the very threads of fate itself. And you're about to discover just how profoundly brutal the fate of Greek heroes truly was, transforming divine favor into a cosmic curse and glory into agony. Having been introduced to the grim shadow that perpetually looms over the lives of Greek heroes, your understanding of their brutal fates deepens as you confront the very source of their extraordinary abilities. Divine parentage cursed gift. Forget the triumphant blessings of a god's lineage, being born a demigod, the offspring of an Olympian and a mortal, meant inheriting not just immense strength, beauty, or unique talents, but also a terrifying legacy of divine jealousy, impossible labors, profound suffering, and often a tragic, violent demise, turning your very birthright into a cosmic curse. You quickly learn that having a god as a parent isn't a ticket to an easy life. It's a direct invitation to cosmic drama, relentless persecution, and often a miserable end, simply because of who your daddy or mommy is. It's like being born into a very powerful, very dysfunctional royal family, where your celebrity status means you're constantly targeted by jealous relatives, forced into impossible tasks, and everyone wants to kill you, just because you exist. You stand in ancient Greece, perhaps amidst the ruins of a city founded by a hero, or listening to a bard recount the tales of Hercules or Perseus. You are a demigod, born from a clandestine affair between a powerful Olympian, often Zeus, the supreme tyrant, serial abuser, from The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 2. Remember his insatiable lust and your mortal mother, who often suffered immensely for his unwanted attention. Recall divine lust, dangerous attention from Why Being a Mortal in Greek Myths Sucked. Section 3. Your strength is prodigious, your beauty captivating, your destiny seemingly glorious, but your very existence, a living testament to divine infidelity, is an immediate affront to the gods' jealous spouses, particularly Hera, the queen of the gods, who will relentlessly torment you from birth until death. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of being a demigod is that ancient Greek myths almost universally depict heroes of divine parentage facing relentless persecution, impossible challenges, and profound suffering, particularly from jealous Olympian deities, most famously Hera against Zeus's offspring, making their extraordinary birthright a source of immense peril, agonizing labors, and often a tragic, violent end. Despite their unique strengths, their power came with a very heavy, often deadly, price tag. Think about it. Your idea of a divine lineage might be a blessing. Theirs was a constant target on their back. Imagine the relentless persecution. From the moment you are born, you might be targeted. Hercules, the greatest of Greek heroes and son of Zeus, was tormented by Hera. Remember her jealous, vengeful nature from The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 3, and her unrelenting vengeance from Why Being a Mortal in Greek Myths Sucked. Section 4, from Birth. She sent snakes to his cradle, drove him to madness, causing him to kill his own family, and instigated his 12 impossible labors, which we'll explore more in Section 6, hoping each would lead to his death. His entire life was a direct consequence of his father's infidelity and his stepmother's implacable hatred. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the gods' petty cruelty and the hero's grim struggle is the myth of Dionysus, another son of Zeus by a mortal mother. Semele remember her tragic incineration from Zeus's power. Section 2 of The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Hera, in her relentless jealousy, continued to torment Dionysus, even after his mother's death. She drove him to madness, forcing him to wander the world until he found healing and established his cult. Imagine being pursued by a vengeful goddess from the moment you're born, forcing you to literally go insane and wander the earth. All because your dad cheated on your stepmom. Historians still argue whether the consistent portrayal of demigods suffering immense hardship and persecution was primarily a cultural mechanism for ancient Greeks to rationalize the dangers of ambition and the precariousness of power, even for those with divine favor, thereby promoting humility and caution against challenging the gods. Or if these narratives also served a deeper mythological purpose, exploring the complex relationship between divine power and mortal frailty, and emphasizing that even divine blood could not protect against suffering and death, making heroes relatable through their pain. Was it about warning against ambition, or making heroes more human that defined their brutal suffering? The challenges are endless. You might be forced to undertake impossible quests which we'll explore further, facing terrifying monsters like the Hydra or the Minotaur, which we briefly touched on in Section 7 of Why Being a Mortal in Greek Myths Sucked. Your divine parent might offer sporadic aid, but their interventions are often capricious or come with their own set of complications. Their favor is a fleeting thing, and their wrath, if incurred, is absolute. Your extraordinary gifts, your superhuman strength, your unmatched beauty, your prophetic abilities, are not just blessings. They are magnets for danger. They attract the envy of mortals, the jealousy of gods, and the terrifying attention of fate. You are set apart, both above and below humanity, condemned to a life that is never truly ordinary, never truly peaceful. Your personal life is often plagued by tragedy. Loved ones might be targeted by jealous gods. Remember Hera's vengeance from Section 4 of Why Being a Mortal in Greek Myth Sucked, which extended to anyone associated with Zeus's lovers, or succumb to the consequences of your perilous quests. Your lineage might be cursed, bringing multi-generational suffering, which we'll discuss in Section 14. You might find love, only for it to end in heartbreak, or for your beloved to be snatched away by jealous deities. Recall the tragic loves of mortals. Section 9 in the outline. You feel the constant tension, the gnawing anxiety that accompanies your extraordinary birthright. You wield immense power, but it is always shadowed by the threat of divine wrath, inevitable suffering, and a tragic, often violent, end. You push through agonizing labors, battle monstrous foes, and endure profound personal loss, knowing that your life is a constant brutal testament to the precarious price of being a demigod. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about fighting monsters, it's about the brutal reality of divine parentage. Your extraordinary birth is a cursed gift, transforming your existence into a relentless odyssey of immense peril, ceaseless persecution, and profound suffering, ensuring that the heavy price of divine blood was perpetually paid in a lifetime of agonizing trials. A constant reminder that being born a hero often meant being condemned to a life of extraordinary misery, a chilling testament to the terrifying cost of glory. Having been born into the perilous reality of divine parentage, carrying the weight of a cursed gift, your understanding of a Greek hero's brutal fate now confronts its most unyielding and terrifying aspect. Prophecy, inescapable doom. Forget free will, personal choices, or the ability to truly shape your own destiny. In ancient Greece, your life's path, its triumphs, and its inevitable tragic end were often predetermined by a cosmic force, by chilling prophecies delivered by oracles, or by divine pronouncements made before your very birth, dictating your destiny with an iron grip that no one, not even the gods themselves, could truly escape or alter. You quickly learn that your journey through life is merely a fulfillment of a script already written, and that every desperate attempt to defy your predetermined path only leads you closer to its tragic, agonizing, and often ironic conclusion. It's like being forced to act in a very long, very complex play. But your lines are set in stone, and every attempt to improvise just makes the ending worse. Often for everyone around you, you stand at a crossroads, pondering a difficult choice, or perhaps you hear a bard recounting the tale of a hero whose destiny was foretold from birth. The air around you, usually vibrant with the sounds of daily life, now seems to carry a subtle hum of inevitability, a chilling understanding that your future is not yours to command. You, as a hero, are born into a world where fate Moira, destiny Ananka, and prophecy Mantis are very real, very powerful, and utterly unavoidable forces, often dictated by pronouncements made by beings far more powerful and ancient than yourself. Your prayers, your sacrifices, your struggles all can be rendered meaningless by a predetermined path, pushing you, relentlessly, towards your inevitable end. One mainstream historical fact that utterly defines the Greek concept of destiny, particularly for heroes, is that ancient Greek myths consistently emphasize the absolute power of prophecies and solemn oaths, portraying them as unbreakable bonds that dictated the fates of individuals, entire families, and even nations, leading to seemingly predetermined outcomes that often occurred despite, or ironically, because of, desperate attempts to defy them. This belief in inescapable destiny was a central theme in Greek tragedy and philosophical thought, highlighting humanity's inherent powerlessness in the face of an unyielding cosmic order. Think about it. Your entire life story might already be written, and you have no say in the ending. However grim, imagine a chilling prophecy delivered at your birth, or even before your conception. Perhaps it foretells a glorious but ultimately tragic life, or, more commonly, it might warn of a terrible crime you are destined to commit, a monstrous deed you will unwittingly perform, or a gruesome fate that awaits you. Oedipus, for instance, was famously cursed by a prophecy that he would kill his father and marry his mother. Despite his parents' desperate attempts to avert this fate by abandoning him as an infant, and Oedipus's own efforts to flee his supposed home, the prophecy was tragically and ironically fulfilled, leading him directly to parricide, incest, blindness, and immense suffering, ultimately destroying his family. The very act of trying to escape destiny paradoxically led him directly to it, a cruel twist of cosmic fate that demonstrated the futility of human will against a predetermined path. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the terrifying ingenuity of these prophecies and the gods' delight in manipulating mortals towards their predetermined ends is the use of ambiguous or cryptic prophecies. Oracles, particularly the Pythia at Delphi, whom many heroes would consult, often delivered prophecies that could be interpreted in multiple ways, leading mortals to make choices that, in their desperate attempt to achieve a favorable outcome, unwittingly brought about the prophesied doom. Recall how Apollo manipulated Cassandra's prophecies in Section 6 of The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods, condemning her to speak truth no one would believe, ensuring her words ultimately contributed to Troy's downfall. As prophesied, imagine being given a life or death clue that sounds helpful, but is actually a riddle designed to trap you. And no matter what you do, you're merely a puppet on the strings of a grim destiny. Historians still argue whether the Greek belief in the inescapable power of prophecies and divine oaths was primarily a cultural mechanism for ancient Greeks to rationalize the unpredictable and often tragic events of human life, e.g., sudden death, natural disasters, unrequited love, illness, providing a mythological framework for understanding unavoidable suffering and the limits of human free will, or if these narratives also served a deeper sociological purpose, reinforcing the power of religious authorities like oracles and the importance of adhering to solemn vows in a society where trust and honor were paramount, thereby encouraging compliance through the fear of cosmic retribution. Did it help them cope with chaos or enforce social norms that made oaths and prophecies so powerful? Oaths, once sworn by gods or mortals, were equally binding and terrifying. Gods, when they swore an oath by the sacred river Styx, a river in the underworld. Hades' domain. Remember Section 6 of what Hades was actually like. Its waters so potent, even gods feared breaking a vow sworn upon them, were utterly bound by it, even to their own detriment, facing severe consequences if they broke their word. Mortals, too, when they swore a solemn oath, perhaps in a legal dispute, which we explored in Why Justice Sucked in the Middle Ages. Section 4. Trial by ordeal often involved oaths, were believed to be held accountable by the gods, often facing brutal divine punishment for broken vows, turning a simple promise into a cosmic contract. This meant that a fleeting promise, made in haste or desperation, could irrevocably bind your future and bring devastating consequences, making every spoken word a potential chain. The very concept of a hero in Greek myths is often intertwined with inescapable destiny. Heroes like Achilles were famously foretold to have a short but glorious life, despite his unmatched might and his mother Thetis's desperate efforts to protect him, dipping him in the Styx, leaving only his heel vulnerable. His fate was sealed by the arrow to his heel. Hercules, for all his immense strength, was driven by prophecies and divine commands to perform his impossible labors, often due to Hera's vengeance. Remember her unrelenting vengeance from Section 5 of The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. His seemingly heroic deeds merely fulfilling a predetermined path. Their greatness was not solely their own doing, but a path laid out by an unyielding cosmic force, a terrifying testament to the limits of even divine will, reminding you that even a hero is just a pawn in a larger game. The psychological toll of living under such a predetermined fate is immense. You might strive for a particular outcome, fighting against every obstacle, only to find yourself constantly thwarted by seemingly random events that subtly push you towards your prophesied doom. The idea that your every choice, every action, is merely a step in a script already written, can lead to profound despair, a sense of utter powerlessness, and a chilling resignation to your ultimate fate. Free will becomes an illusion, and life a terrifying journey towards an inescapable conclusion. Your actions merely echoes of a cosmic decree, robbing you of genuine agency. You feel the cold dread of inevitability, the heavy weight of a future already written, and the profound helplessness of being a mere pawn in a cosmic drama. You gaze at the stars, then to the ground, searching for signs, for understanding, but finding only the chilling certainty of predetermined suffering. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about fighting monsters. It's about the terrifying, inescapable reality of prophecy. Your life is an unbreakable bond to a predetermined destiny, transforming your struggles into a futile battle against cosmic will, ensuring that your triumphs were fleeting, your sorrows profound, and your ultimate fate often tragic and predetermined. A chilling testament to humanity's profound powerlessness in a world where destiny was a brutal and utterly unavoidable force, dictating every step of your mortal, heroic existence. Having accepted the predetermined, often tragic, reality of prophecy, your understanding of a Greek hero's brutal fate is next confronted by a trap that mortals often, unknowingly, set for themselves: hubris, fatal flaw. Forget simple arrogance or a moment of boasting. In ancient Greece, excessive pride, particularly a mortal's direct challenge to divine authority, a boast of superiority over a god, or a denial of divine influence, was considered a grave offense, an act of supreme insolence that inevitably provoked a terrifying, often agonizing, and almost always disproportionate retribution from the Olympians. You quickly learn that your greatest strength, your ambition, or your talent can become your ultimate undoing, turning every moment of self-congratulation into a chilling prelude to cosmic punishment. It's like being a talented artist, but if you claim you're better than Picasso, Picasso will literally turn you into a spider. And that's a permanent career change. You stand in a bustling marketplace, or perhaps a local festival, listening to a craftsman boast of his unparalleled skill, or a hero recounting his mighty deeds with excessive pride. A subtle ripple of unease passes through the crowd. Some avert their eyes. Others offer quick prayers to avert divine attention. This isn't just about good manners. It's about avoiding hubris, that dangerous overweening pride that dared to put a mortal on par with, or above, the gods. The air seems to thicken with unspoken warnings, a chilling reminder that the gods, for all their own flaws, tolerated no challenge to their supreme, unassailable authority. One mainstream historical fact that utterly defines this terrifying concept is that in ancient Greek myths, hubris, excessive pride or defiance towards the gods, was consistently portrayed as a fatal flaw for mortals, inevitably provoking severe, often disproportionate, and agonizing divine punishment, including transformations, madness, prolonged torment, or death, serving as a powerful cultural warning against human arrogance and the dangers of challenging cosmic order. The gods saw such pride as a direct insult to their divinity, a fundamental violation of the natural hierarchy between mortals and immortals. Think about it. Your biggest strength, your greatest achievement, could also be the very thing that gets you obliterated by a god, just for acknowledging it too loudly. Imagine the agonizing fates fueled by hubris. You've already seen Niobe, a mortal queen who boasted that she had more children than Leto Apollo and Artemis's mother, suffer the ultimate retribution. Apollo and Artemis remember them from The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods, sections 6 and 7, mercilessly shot down all 14 of her children with their arrows, leaving her heartbroken and transformed into a weeping stone. Her immense grief was a living monument to her fatal pride. Marsyas, a satyr, a half-human, half-goat creature, dared to challenge Apollo to a musical contest and foolishly won, only to be brutally flayed alive by the enraged god, his skin nailed to a tree, a horrifying testament to Apollo's intolerance for perceived musical superiority and his own profound arrogance. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the god's often petty, yet utterly devastating response to hubris is the story of Arachne, a mortal weaver, renowned throughout Lydia for her unparalleled skill, dared to boast that her weaving was superior to even Athena's. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and crafts, disguised herself as an old woman and warned Arachne against such pride, urging her to repent. But Arachne scoffed at the warning, challenging the disguised goddess directly. Enraged, Athena revealed herself and challenged Arachne to a weaving contest. When Arachne's tapestry was judged to be flawless, even depicting the god's own scandalous affairs with unflinching realism, a form of divine hubris on Arachne's part by exposing them. Athena, consumed by jealous fury and artistic rivalry, destroyed Arachne's magnificent work and beat her mercilessly. When Arachne, humiliated and despairing, tried to hang herself, Athena, in a twisted act of mercy that ensured a prolonged punishment, saved her by transforming her into a spider, condemning her to weave forever, a lifelong, agonizing punishment for a single moment of pride and artistic excellence. Imagine being eternally transformed into an insect, simply because your art was too good, and a goddess was a sore loser who couldn't stand being outshone. Historians still argue whether the Greek myths depicting such harsh divine punishments for hubris primarily served as a cultural warning against excessive arrogance and the dangers of challenging established authority, both divine and human, thereby reinforcing societal hierarchies and promoting humility. Or if these narratives also functioned as a way for ancient Greeks to explore and cope with the inherent unfairness and unpredictability of life, personifying natural disasters and inexplicable misfortunes as divine retribution, making hubris a convenient explanation for unavoidable tragedy in a world where direct divine intervention was accepted. Was it about moral lessons, or a way to understand misfortune, that shaped the terrifying consequences of hubris? The consequences of hubris were rarely quick or merciful. They were often prolonged, insidious, and psychologically devastating, designed to inflict maximum suffering and serve as a terrifying example to other mortals. The gods, in their immense power, could transform mortals, drive them to madness, inflict endless torment, or ensure their lineage suffered for generations. The goal was not just to kill, but to make the suffering a public, enduring spectacle, a terrifying warning to others, a grim testament to the absolute power of the Olympians and their zero-tolerance policy for perceived slights. Your virtue, your piety, your entire existence is a constant tightrope walk against unknowingly committing hubris, a moment of joy, a boast of your own strength, a prayer that might be misinterpreted as a challenge. Any of these could draw the terrifying attention of a god, sealing your fate. You are constantly aware of your own insignificance in the face of divine power, trying to live humbly, avoiding any act that might be perceived as a slight to the jealous, proud Olympians, knowing that their fragile egos could bring about your total destruction. You feel the cold dread of knowing that your own success, your own talent, could become the very cause of your undoing. You watch the agonizing fates of those who dared to defy the gods, and you realize that living under their gaze means living in perpetual fear of a random, devastating punishment, simply for being too good, too proud, or too noticeable. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about random misfortune or divine cruelty. It's about the terrifying, inescapable consequences of hubris. Your life is a constant gamble with divine pride, transforming your very achievements into a potential curse, ensuring that your pursuit of excellence was perpetually shadowed by the terrifying threat of disproportionate divine retribution. A chilling testament to humanity's profound vulnerability in a world where arrogance could lead to an agonizing, irreversible, and eternally remembered demise. Having witnessed the agonizing consequences of hubris, where mortal pride inevitably invited brutal divine retribution, your understanding of a Greek hero's brutal fate now pivots to an even more insidious and pervasive threat. Divine jealousy, unrelenting vengeance. Forget mere irritation or a passing grudge. The furious envy of the Olympians, particularly Hera and Aphrodite, was an implacable, terrifying, and profoundly destructive force, meticulously orchestrated to inflict agonizing, often disproportionate, suffering on those who dared to challenge them, outshine them, or become targets of their rivals' affections. You quickly learn that offending a god's pride or crossing their spouse's path means facing a relentless, lethal pursuit, and that their vengeance is slow, insidious, and utterly inescapable, often consuming innocent lives in its path. It's like being caught in a perpetual, cosmic rivalry show, where the judges are all-powerful, easily offended, and will literally ruin your life or afterlife if you accidentally make one of them look bad, or happen to be involved in one of their partner's many affairs. You stand by the sun-drenched shores of the Aegean Sea, or perhaps within a bustling marketplace, trying to live your life, perhaps even basking in some small achievement of your own. Your mind, however, is now attuned to the chilling tales of divine jealousy, having seen the swift, brutal end of those who succumbed to hubris. The air, usually vibrant with life, now seems to carry a subtle hum of unseen animosity, a constant reminder that success, beauty, or simply being noticed can be a profound curse if it triggers the envy of an Olympian. You know that to attract the wrong kind of attention from a deity means inviting a relentless, agonizing retribution that spares no one, often not even yourself. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of a harmonious pantheon is that ancient Greek myths are replete with accounts of Olympian gods, particularly Hera and Aphrodite, engaging in brutal, relentless, and often disproportionate acts of revenge against rivals. Mortals, especially Zeus's lovers and their offspring, or those who challenged their divine authority or beauty, inflicting madness, eternal torment, and devastating misfortune, consistently portraying divine jealousy as a powerful and destructive force. Their envy frequently drove them to horrifying lengths, demonstrating a profound lack of mercy and an insatiable desire for retribution against those who incurred their wrath. Think about it. Your idea of a divine queen is nurturing and kind. Theirs is a cosmic stalker with an endless list of victims, all because her husband can't keep it in his toga. Imagine the agonizing fates fueled by this divine jealousy. You've already glimpsed Io transformed into a cow and relentlessly tormented by Hera from the disturbing truth about Greek gods. Section 3. Jealous, vengeful. Driven across continents by a gadfly. Simply for being the object of Zeus's desire, recall Zeus. Supreme tyrant. Serial abuser. From Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 2. And his Divine Lust Dangerous Attention. From Why Being a Mortal in Greek Myths Sucked. Section 3. Callisto. Another of Zeus's lovers, and a devoted follower of Artemis. Remember her cold, vengeful nature from The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 7. Was transformed into a bear by a furious Hera and nearly killed by her own son. All for attracting Zeus's attention and violating her vow of chastity. These weren't fleeting acts of anger. They were prolonged campaigns of torment, designed to inflict maximum suffering and serve as a terrifying warning to others who might dare to catch Zeus's eye. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the depth of Hera's vindictiveness and her strategic long game in retribution is the story of Semele. After Zeus seduced her, Hera, consumed by jealousy, disguised herself as an old woman and befriended Semele, subtly planting seeds of doubt about Zeus's true identity, urging Semele to demand Zeus reveal himself in his full divine glory. When Semele foolishly made this fatal request, Zeus, bound by an oath, had no choice but to appear in his true form. Incinerating the mortal woman instantly recalls Zeus's terrifying power from Section 2 of The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods and Why Being a Mortal in Greek Myths Sucked. Section 2. Divine Interference. This subtle manipulation, leading to a mortal's agonizing, orchestrated death, highlights Hera's cunning and her willingness to use indirect, yet equally lethal, means to achieve her vengeance against her husband's paramours, proving her patience and her cold-blooded resolve. Imagine a divine rival literally pushing your new girlfriend to her death, and she thinks it's her own idea, simply because she was jealous. Historians still argue whether the Greek myths depicting gods' extreme jealousy and their relentless pursuit of revenge primarily served as a cultural warning against human hubris, excessive pride, and the dangers of offending powerful figures, both divine and mortal, reinforcing social norms against challenging authority or causing social discord. Or if these narratives also functioned as a deeper mythological purpose, exploring the destructive power of human emotions like envy and unrequited love. By projecting them onto the divine realm to understand their own world's chaos and the seemingly inexplicable suffering caused by human passions magnified to a cosmic scale. Was it about warning against pride and social disruption, or explaining human destructive emotion that shaped these tales of divine vengeance? Aphrodite, the goddess of love, was also consumed by a profound vanity and jealousy when her beauty or influence was challenged, or when her authority over love was scorned. You've already seen her manipulative and selfish nature. Recall manipulative, selfish, from The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 8. She famously caused Hippolytus's stepmother, Phaedra, to fall desperately in love with him, leading to false accusations and his tragic death, simply because Hippolytus, a chaste prince, scorned Aphrodite and refused to worship her. Her vengeance was subtle, psychological, and devastatingly effective. She also famously instigated the entire Trojan War by promising Paris the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, thereby inciting a decade-long conflict that devastated nations and cost countless lives, all to assert her own supremacy in a beauty contest, the Judgment of Paris, a chilling display of global catastrophe stemming from profound divine vanity. The tools of divine vengeance were varied and terrifying, sending monstrous creatures like the Lernaean Hydra, which Hera sent against Hercules, inflicting madness. Hera again, against Hercules and Dionysus, orchestrating fatal accidents, transforming victims into animals or plants. Remember Io, Actaeon, Daphne, or causing devastating natural disasters like plagues as Apollo did. Section 6 of The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods, or Famines Demeter. Section 11 of The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Their punishments were rarely quick or merciful. They were often prolonged, insidious, and psychologically devastating, designed to break down their victims slowly, leaving them in perpetual torment, or wiping out their entire lineage for a single slight. The divine memory was long, and their grudges eternal, ensuring that retribution could span generations, a terrifying link to Section 14, Family Curses, Inherited Misery. So, even other gods often held their peace when Hera or Aphrodite's jealous wrath was unleashed. Zeus himself, despite his supreme power, would sometimes go to great lengths to appease Hera or conceal his affairs, knowing the ferocity and persistence of her retribution if he was exposed. The Olympian court, despite its own feuds, often presented a united front against those who incurred their collective or individual wrath, making defiance a truly suicidal act for mortals. As challenging one god could incur the wrath of several, you feel the cold dread of divine animosity, the chilling awareness that your life is a constant gamble against unseen rivalries and personal grudges among the gods. You watch the agonizing fates of those who were simply too beautiful, too proud, or too unlucky to escape a god's envy. And you realize that living under the gaze of these Olympians means living in perpetual fear of a random spark of divine jealousy igniting a cosmic inferno that consumes your entire existence. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about their individual flaws or their personal suffering. It's about the brutal, unrelenting vengeance driven by divine jealousy. Your very existence is subject to their petty rivalries and burning envy, transforming their divine passions into a constant, terrifying shadow of unpredictable retribution, ensuring that the heavy price of personal glory or accidental association was often paid in agonizing torment, irreversible change, and the utter destruction of countless mortal lives, a chilling testament to the terrifying consequences of crossing a jealous god. Even if your life was not consumed by the implacable vengeance of jealous gods, your existence as a Greek hero presented another, more direct, and often utterly horrifying challenge monsters' grueling labors. Forget the simple villain of a fairy tale, The ancient Greek world was teeming with terrifying, colossal, mythical beasts, each a unique embodiment of chaos and destruction. And your divine parentage, remember that cursed gift from Section 2, or a divine decree, would compel you to undertake impossible tasks to defeat them, turning your very life into a relentless series of agonizing, often suicidal trials. You quickly learn that your greatest strength is merely a tool for overcoming unimaginable horrors, and that confronting these monstrous forces means risking dismemberment, poisoning, or a gruesome death, all for a fleeting moment of glory. It's like being forced to complete a very violent, very real video game. But if you lose, you die horribly, and every boss battle involves a creature that defies all logic and sanity. You stand on a desolate, rocky plain, or perhaps near a reeking swamp, the air thick with the stench of decay and the palpable presence of something ancient and malevolent. In the distance, you hear a terrifying roar, or a chilling hiss, signaling the approach of a creature that defies all natural law. This isn't just a wild animal, it's a living nightmare, a monstrous force born of primordial chaos or divine wrath. You are armed with your sword, your club, or your bow. But your courage is constantly tested by the sheer, overwhelming terror these beings inspire. One mainstream historical fact that utterly defines the hero's most common struggle is that ancient Greek heroes were consistently tasked with confronting and defeating a vast array of terrifying mythical monsters: Jagex, the Lernaean Hydra, the Nemean Lion, the Minotaur, Medusa, the Chimera, often as part of labors or quests imposed by gods or kings, making these brutal encounters a central and incredibly perilous aspect of their heroic journeys, frequently resulting in grievous injury or death for the hero or their companions. Battling monsters was the core of their job description. Think about it, your job involves literally fighting dragons and giant lions every other Tuesday. Imagine facing the Lernaean Hydra. This wasn't just a big snake, it was a multi-headed serpent, each head breathing noxious fumes, and when one was severed, two more grew in its place. You struggle to cut off a head, only for two more to sprout, turning your efforts into a desperate, horrifying battle against an ever-growing nightmare. Its venom is deadly, its strength immense. Your only hope is cunning. Perhaps with the aid of a loyal companion who can cauterize the stumps as you cut, preventing regeneration. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the almost bureaucratic complexity and sheer difficulty of these heroic tasks is the existence of the 12 labors of Hercules. These weren't random challenges. They were imposed as a penance for a divinely induced madness sent by Hera. Remember her unrelenting vengeance from Section 5, and each labor was designed to be impossible, meticulously chosen by a rival king, Eurystheus, to ensure Heracles' death. Imagine being given a to-do list, and every item on it is a suicide mission, precisely planned by your nemesis. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of monster myths in ancient Greece and the hero's role in battling them primarily served as a cultural explanation for the unpredictable and often destructive forces of nature. Inexplicable plagues, wild animals, natural disasters, allowing them to personify chaos and danger. Or if these narratives also served a deeper sociological purpose, reflecting societal anxieties about external threats, internal strife, and the dangers of unchecked power, with monsters acting as metaphors for various societal evils that needed to be overcome for civilization to progress. Was it about understanding chaos or promoting social order? that shaped the terrifying monsters. You might find yourself entering a dark, labyrinthine maze, knowing that within its twisting passages lurks the Minotaur, a monstrous creature with the head of a bull and the body of a man, who devours human flesh. The terror of the maze, the constant fear of getting lost, and the chilling knowledge that you are being hunted by a ravenous beast transforms your quest into a profound psychological horror. Your only guide might be a single thread, given by a princess who loves you, hoping it leads you back to the light. Other encounters are equally brutal. You might face the Nemean lion, whose hide is impenetrable, requiring you to strangle it with your bare hands, a test of pure brute strength. Or the Stymphalian birds, with bronze beaks and metallic feathers, raining down lethal projectiles from the sky. The Chimera, a fire-breathing monster with the head of a lion, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail, would demand a desperate aerial battle. The Gorgon Medusa, whose gaze turned all to stone, required you to fight her by looking only at her reflection, a terrifying dance with death. The physical toll of these grueling labors is immense. Your body is constantly bruised, cut, and strained. You suffer from exhaustion, hunger, and profound pain. Remember those physical wounds, endless scars from Section 11 in the outline. Your life is a continuous cycle of battle, recovery, and embarking on the next impossible task, with little respite. Many heroes, and certainly most of their companions, perished during these encounters, their bodies scattered across the ancient landscape, unremembered casualties of someone else's glorious quest. The psychological burden is equally crushing. You live in constant fear, knowing that a new monstrous threat, or an impossible labor, could be imposed upon you at any moment. The horrors you witness, the lives you take even if they are monsters, and the relentless pressure to succeed, all contribute to a profound sense of isolation and eventual weariness. Your courage is constantly tested, your sanity perpetually on the brink. You feel the sharp pain of a monster's blow, the desperate struggle for breath, and the profound, chilling realization that your life is a constant battle against unimaginable horrors. You thrust your weapon, parry a claw, and push through the pain, knowing that your survival depends on your ability to overcome impossible odds. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about divine whims, it's about the brutal reality of monsters. Your heroic life is consumed by a relentless series of grueling labors, transforming your existence into a continuous, agonizing struggle against terrifying creatures, ensuring that the heavy price of glory was perpetually paid in immense suffering, profound physical danger, and the grim knowledge that your most heroic deeds were achieved at the constant, terrifying edge of oblivion. A chilling testament to humanity's desperate courage in a world teeming with living nightmares. Even if you, a Greek hero, miraculously survived the brutal, agonizing labors against terrifying monsters, your greatest peril often came not from a beast or a vengeful god, but from the insidious depths of human nature itself. Betrayal, human frailty. Forget unwavering loyalty and steadfast allies, the pursuit of glory, the allure of power, or the bitter sting of jealousy often turned trusted companions, family members, or even beloved spouses into deadly adversaries, transforming your heroic journey into a treacherous maze of hidden schemes and devastating double-crosses. You quickly learn that your greatest strength is vulnerable to the cunning and treachery of those closest to you, and that a trusting heart can be a fatal flaw, making every alliance a gamble and every friendship a potential knife in the back. It's like being a star athlete. but your own teammates are constantly trying to spike your drink, steal your glory, or just flat out murder you, all while smiling to your face. You stand in a bustling city, perhaps after returning from a triumphant quest, or you sit at a celebratory banquet. Your ears, accustomed to the roars of monsters and the clang of battle, are now attuned to the subtler sounds of courtly life, hushed whispers, forced smiles, and the unsettling silence that sometimes falls when a particular name is mentioned. You are a hero, renowned and admired, but your very success breeds envy and ambition in others. Your trusted companion, your loyal wife, your ambitious sibling, any of them could, for various reasons, become the instrument of your downfall. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of heroic camaraderie is that ancient Greek myths frequently depict heroes being betrayed by trusted allies, jealous family members, or scheming rivals, often for power, wealth, or revenge, leading to their downfall, murder, or profound suffering, highlighting the pervasive human frailty and treachery that constantly imperiled even the most celebrated figures. Loyalty was a precarious commodity, and betrayal a common, devastating theme. Think about it. Your idea of a faithful sidekick might be unwavering support. Theirs might be a quick stab in the back. Imagine the agonizing circumstances of betrayal. Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, achieved the impossible by retrieving the Golden Fleece with the aid of Medea, a powerful sorceress who betrayed her own family for him. Yet, after their triumphant return, Jason brutally betrayed Medea by abandoning her for a new princess, leading to Medea's horrifying, vengeful murder of their own children and Jason's eventual miserable death. Agamemnon, the king who led the Greek forces to victory in the Trojan War, returned home only to be brutally murdered by his own wife, Clytemnestra, and her lover Aegisthus, in revenge for his sacrifice of their daughter Iphigenia. Remember that horrifying human sacrifice from section 11 of Why Being Immortal in Greek Myth Sucked. His triumph was met with treachery in his own home. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the psychological complexity and often grim irony of these betrayals is the concept of a hero's downfall being directly linked to their hubris, or a past injustice they committed, as if the betrayal itself was a form of cosmic payback, blurring the lines between external malice and self-inflicted fate. For instance, Agamemnon's murder, while an act of betrayal by his wife, was also framed as divine retribution for his earlier sacrifice of Iphigenia. Imagine being betrayed and murdered by your spouse, and everyone says it's because you deserved it for something you did years ago, turning the betrayal into a karmic lesson. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of betrayal narratives in Greek heroic myths primarily served as a cultural explanation for the inherent instability of human relationships and the unpredictable nature of trust, reflecting a pessimistic view of human loyalty, or if these narratives also functioned as a subtle warning against unchecked ambition, pride, and the dangers of violating oaths or committing injustices, emphasizing that even heroes could not escape the moral consequences of their actions, with betrayal acting as a form of karmic retribution. Was it about understanding human nature's darkness, or about enforcing moral lessons that shaped these tales of betrayal? The motives for betrayal were varied and profoundly human: envy of a hero's glory or power, lust for their spouse or wealth, revenge for a past wrong fulfilled or imagined, or ambition to usurp their position. A seemingly loyal companion might subtly undermine your authority, plant false rumors, or even directly conspire with your enemies. Recall those conspiracies, plots everywhere, from How Roman Politics Was a Horrifying Business. Section 8. A jealous sibling might plot your exile or your murder to secure their own claim to the throne. The danger was often subtle, insidious, building over time, making it incredibly difficult to detect until it was too late. The consequences of betrayal were devastating. It could lead to the hero's murder, prolonged torment, or the destruction of their family and legacy. They might be exiled, driven mad, or suffer profound personal loss. Recall the general mortal interactions' cruel whims from Section 12 of Why Being Immortal in Greek Myth Sucked, and how it caused suffering. The psychological toll was immense, the shattering of trust, the profound sense of abandonment, and the agonizing realization that those closest to you could be your ultimate undoing. Even divine favor offered little protection. Gods might intervene to save their favored heroes from external threats. Remember that divine interference from Section 2 of Why Being Immortal in Greek Myth Sucked, but they rarely prevented betrayal by humans, viewing it as a manifestation of human frailty or a necessary part of fate. The hero was left to grapple with the profound pain of human perfidy, utterly alone. You feel the cold dread of suspicion, the sudden insight that a friendly smile might conceal a hidden agenda, and the profound, aching pain of a trust shattered. You look at your allies, your family, your beloved, and you struggle to discern loyalty from deception, knowing that your greatest battles might not be with monsters, but with the darkness in the human heart. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about fighting terrifying beasts. It's about the brutal reality of betrayal. Your heroic journey is consumed by ceaseless struggles against human frailty and treachery, transforming your closest bonds into a source of immense vulnerability, ensuring that the heavy price of glory was perpetually paid in profound personal loss, devastating abandonment, and the chilling knowledge that your most tragic downfall might come not from an enemy's blade, but from the cruel, hidden schemes of those you trusted most. A constant testament to humanity's capacity for darkness, even against its greatest heroes. Even if you, a Greek hero, managed to survive the crushing pain of human betrayal, navigating the treacherous waters of treachery from allies and family, your mind itself remained vulnerable to another, more insidious, and utterly terrifying form of divine retribution, madness, divine punishment. Forget simple despair or fleeting grief. The gods, in their terrifying wrath, could inflict profound mental instability, driving heroes to horrifying acts of violence against their own loved ones, to crippling delusions, or to a permanent, agonizing loss of sanity, transforming their once brilliant minds into a chaotic wasteland. You quickly learn that your greatest asset, your very reason, can be twisted into a horrifying weapon by a vengeful deity. And that divine punishment isn't just about physical suffering, but about the brutal, relentless destruction of your inner world. It's like being a brilliant strategist, but a god makes you believe your family are monsters, and you are forced to brutally murder them, only to wake up to the horrifying reality of what you've done. You sit in a moment of quiet reflection, perhaps after a great deed or a profound loss. Your mind, usually sharp and resolute, feels a subtle tremor, a fleeting sense of unreality. You recall the chilling tales of heroes driven to madness by the gods, and a cold dread washes over you. The air seems to thicken with an unseen threat, a terrifying awareness that your own sanity is a fragile gift, perpetually at the mercy of divine whim. Your heroism, your strength, your very identity, can be systematically dismantled not by a physical blow, but by a psychological assault from Olympus. One mainstream historical fact that utterly defines this terrifying form of divine retribution is that ancient Greek myths frequently depict the Olympian gods, particularly Hera and Dionysus, inflicting madness mania or ate upon mortals and heroes as a form of divine punishment or influence, leading to horrifying acts of delusion, self-destruction, violence against loved ones, and profound mental instability, highlighting the gods' terrifying power over the human mind. This form of punishment was often seen as more terrible than death, as it destroyed the soul while leaving the body alive. Think about it. Your idea of a divine punishment might be a lightning bolt. Theirs was having your mind completely twisted, turning you into a monster. Imagine the agonizing descent into madness. Hercules, the greatest of Greek heroes, was famously driven to a terrifying frenzy by Hera, remember her unrelenting vengeance from section 5, in a fit of jealousy over Zeus's affair with his mother. Recall divine parentage cursed gift from section 2. In his divinely inflicted madness, Hercules tragically murdered his beloved wife, Megara, and their children, believing them to be monstrous enemies. The awakening from this terrifying delusion, the realization of the unspeakable horror he had committed, left him utterly devastated, plagued by profound guilt and despair. His physical strength was useless against this internal torment, a chilling testament to Hera's insidious cruelty. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the almost theatrical and horrifying nature of this divine punishment is the concept of Dionysus's followers, the Maenads, being driven to divine frenzy mania that could turn them into bloodthirsty, dismembering entities. While often associated with ecstasy and liberation, remember Dionysus. Ecstatic, brutal. From The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 9. This frenzy could also be inflicted as a punishment for those who defied him. Pentheus, the king of Thebes, who scorned Dionysus, was driven mad by the god, causing his own mother, Agave, and her sisters to tear him limb from limb sparagmos, believing him to be a wild animal. Recall that horrifying act from section 9 of The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Imagine a god literally twisting your mind so completely that your own mother rips you apart, thinking you're a wild beast, all because you disrespected his cult. Historians still argue whether the Greek myths depicting gods inflicting madness were primarily a cultural explanation for real-world mental illnesses like epilepsy, psychosis, or severe depression that were poorly understood in ancient times, attributing them to divine intervention as a way to make sense of inexplicable human behavior, or if these narratives also served a deeper mythological purpose. Exploring the terrifying consequences of defying divine will and highlighting the profound fragility of the human mind when confronted with overwhelming cosmic forces, making madness a powerful tool for divine retribution. Was it about explaining illness or about demonstrating divine power that shaped these terrifying tales of madness? The symptoms of divine madness were varied and terrifying delusions, hallucinations, violent outbursts, profound despair, and a complete loss of self-control. The affected individual would be a danger to themselves and others. Their once brilliant minds turned into a chaotic wasteland. There was no cure, no escape from this divinely inflicted torment. Physicians whose primitive care we explored in Why You Wouldn't Survive a Day in Ancient Egypt. Section 9 were helpless against a god's curse. The only hope was divine mercy, often sought through agonizing rituals or desperate appeals to the very God who inflicted the torment. The psychological toll on heroes was immense. To wield immense strength and fame, only to have your own mind betray you, twisting your reality and forcing you to commit unforgivable acts against those you loved, was a profound, agonizing punishment, far worse than physical pain or even death. The guilt, the despair, the permanent scarring of knowing what you had done, even under divine influence, would haunt your waking hours and fill your nightmares, leaving you a shattered husk of your former self. You feel the subtle shift in your thoughts, the fleeting sense of unreality, and the profound, chilling realization that your own mind is a battleground for divine whims. You pray desperately, not for glory, but for clarity, for the sanity that keeps you human. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about fighting monsters or facing betrayal. It's about the brutal reality of divine madness. Your heroic existence is consumed by the terrifying threat of mental instability, transforming your mind into a profound source of agony, ensuring that the heavy price of divine favor or retribution was often paid in profound psychological torment. A chilling testament to the terrifying power of the gods to utterly destroy the human spirit. Even when the body survives, leaving behind a legacy of shattered minds and unforgivable deeds, even if your heroic mind miraculously resisted the agonizing descent into divine madness, your heart, in the world of Greek myths, remained tragically vulnerable to another profound source of suffering. Tragic love-cursed bonds. Forget happy endings or everlasting passion. Romantic relationships for Greek heroes, whether with mortals or goddesses, were almost universally doomed, destined to end in heartbreak, betrayal, violence, or agonizing death, often as a direct consequence of divine interference, jealous rivalries, or inescapable fate. You quickly learn that love here is a dangerous vulnerability, a precious, fleeting solace that almost inevitably leads to profound emotional torment, and often a gruesome demise, turning your most intimate connections into a wellspring of endless sorrow. It's like being forced to star in a very romantic, but very, very dark soap opera, where every love story inevitably ends with someone dying horribly or being turned into a tree, and you're just trying to brace yourself for the inevitable heartbreak. You stand in a sunlit courtyard, perhaps witnessing a joyous wedding celebration, or listening to a bard sing a romantic ode to a heroic couple. You might feel a flicker of hope for your own romantic prospects, a yearning for companionship and affection amidst your brutal heroic labors. But the stories you hear, the myths woven into the very fabric of Greek life, paint a chilling picture of love's ultimate futility. Your personal happiness, your deepest desires for connection, are constantly at the mercy of capricious gods, jealous spouses, and an unyielding destiny, ensuring that even love, the most potent of human emotions, is transformed into a source of profound, almost guaranteed, suffering. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of Greek mythology's love stories is that ancient Greek myths are replete with accounts of heroic romantic relationships ending in profound tragedy, often due to divine jealousy. Hera's persecution of Zeus's lovers, inescapable prophecies, betrayal, violent deaths including murder, suicide, or accidental killings, or irreversible transformations, consistently portraying love as a powerful but inherently perilous and often doomed force for mortals. Happiness in love was fleeting, suffering almost guaranteed. Think about it. Your idea of a romantic comedy ends with marriage, Theirs often ends with murder-suicide, or being turned into a plant. Imagine the agonizing fates of those who dared to love. You've already seen Io transformed into a cow and relentlessly tormented by Hera for being loved by Zeus. Remember Hera's unrelenting vengeance from Section 5. She's a central figure in this. Daphne, who rejected Apollo's advances, was transformed into a laurel tree to escape him. Recall Apollo's arrogant, cruel nature from The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 6. These are just a few examples of divine interference transforming love into profound suffering. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the gods' casual cruelty and humanity's desperate attempts to defy a tragic fate in love is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus, a legendary musician, journeyed into the underworld. Remember, mortal visitors, living trespassers from Hades' realm. Section 12 of What Hades Was Actually Like to retrieve his beloved Eurydice, who had died from a snake bite. Hades, moved by Orpheus's music, agreed. But on one condition, Orpheus must not look back at Eurydice until they reached the upper world. In his anxiety, Orpheus looked back at the very threshold, and Eurydice was snatched back into the underworld forever. A tragic tale of love lost by a single, agonizing misstep. Imagine successfully journeying to hell and back to save your wife, only to lose her forever because you accidentally glanced at her too soon. A devastating moment of fatal, accidental disobedience. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of tragic love stories in Greek mythology primarily served as a cultural mechanism for ancient Greeks to rationalize and cope with the inherent fragility and pain of human relationships, the unpredictability of fate, and the inevitability of loss in a brutal world, thereby expressing universal emotional truths. Or if these narratives also functioned as a subtle warning against excessive passion, female independence, or challenging divine will. Using tragic love as a tool for enforcing societal norms and demonstrating the dangers of intense, uncontrollable emotion. Was it about exploring universal pain or promoting social control that made love so tragically doomed? Love could also lead to violence and betrayal from mortal rivals. Paris, the Prince of Troy, fell in love with Helen, the wife of Menelaus, instigated by Aphrodite. Remember her manipulative, selfish nature from The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. Section 8. Their love sparked the devastating Trojan Wars. Call War God's Playground from Section 9 of Why Being Immortal in Greek Myth Sucked, costing countless lives and destroying nations. Medea, the sorceress who betrayed her family for love of Jason, recall Betrayal Human Frailty from Section 7, was then betrayed by him, leading to her horrifying, vengeful murder of their own children. A brutal illustration of love turning to unimaginable hatred. The consequences were profound heartbreak, separation, madness as love, or its loss, could drive mortals to despair, and often gruesome death for one or both lovers. Your emotional vulnerability, your capacity for deep affection, becomes your ultimate weakness, a tempting target for jealous gods or scheming mortals. The joy of love, when it occurred, was often fleeting, a precious respite before the inevitable tragedy struck. Even the gods themselves, for all their power, were often victims of tragic love or destructive passions. Zeus's countless affairs led to Hera's unending jealousy. Apollo's unrequited love for Daphne led to her transformation. The themes of tragic love permeated the divine realm as well, mirroring the suffering of mortals, but with cosmic consequences. You feel the profound ache of heartbreak, the cold dread of impending loss, and the horrifying realization that your deepest affection might bring only agony. You cling to a fleeting moment of joy, a shared glance, a tender touch, knowing that it is a precious, vulnerable thing, constantly threatened by forces beyond your control. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about battling monsters. It's about the brutal reality of tragic love. Your heroic journey is consumed by heartbreaking, often fatal, romantic outcomes, transforming your deepest desires into a profound source of suffering, ensuring that the heavy price of divine favor or an extraordinary life was perpetually paid in shattered relationships, devastating loss, and the chilling knowledge that even love, the most powerful of human emotions, was often a cursed bond, destined for a tragic end in the unpredictable cosmos of ancient Greece. Even if your heart was miraculously spared the agony of tragic love, your heroic life remained constantly susceptible to another form of profound personal suffering. Exile, lonely wanderings. Forget a hero's triumphant return home after impossible labors. In ancient Greece, for heroes who committed an unintentional crime, faced an unforgiving prophecy, or simply incurred the wrath of a powerful god or mortal king, banishment from their homeland was a common, brutal, and often lifelong punishment, condemning them to a rootless, isolated existence, forever longing for the familiar shores they could never return to. You quickly learn that glory is fleeting, but wandering is eternal, and that your greatest fear might not be death, but a life lived forever apart from your home, your family, and your people. It's like being a famous athlete who is suddenly banned from your sport, exiled from your country, and forced to wander the earth, a lonely ghost, forever denied the comfort of belonging. You stand on the dusty road leading out of your city-state, or perhaps on the deck of a ship sailing into the unknown. You are no longer a revered hero. You are an outcast, banished by your own people or by a powerful king. Your crime might be unintentional manslaughter, a common tragic accident for heroes. Remember those myths of divine interference, a ritualistic impurity, or simply falling victim to political machinations. Whatever the cause, your fate is sealed. You must leave your home. Your family remember that brutal reality from Section 7. Betrayal, human frailty. Family bonds are constantly tested, and everything familiar, condemned to a life of perpetual wandering. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of heroic independence is that exile was a common and severe punishment for heroes and other prominent figures in ancient Greece, forcing them into banishment from their city-states for various reasons: homicide, ritual pollution, political defeat, leading to a life of rootless wandering, loss of social status, and profound loneliness, often dependent on the uncertain hospitality of strangers. Being cut off from your polis city-state was considered a devastating fate, as your identity was deeply tied to your community. Think about it. Your punishment isn't just about leaving your country. It's about losing who you are. Imagine the profound loneliness. You are a stranger in every land you visit, constantly moving, never truly belonging. You might find temporary refuge in another city-state, offering your heroic skills for hire as Hercules often did. But you are always an outsider, marked by your foreignness and your past, the comforts of a permanent home, the familiarity of your own people, the shared language and customs. All are denied to you. You live in a state of perpetual displacement. your spirit aching for the simple warmth of belonging. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the challenges and the unique burdens of exile is the concept of a suppliant, an exiled hero, seeking refuge in a foreign city, would often present himself as a suppliant, appealing to the local ruler's sense of piety and hospitality, offering his skills or loyalty in exchange for protection. However, accepting a suppliant often came with risks for the host city, as it could provoke the wrath of the gods or the ruler who exiled the hero, making offering aid a precarious act. Imagine having to beg for protection in a foreign land, knowing that helping you could bring divine retribution down on your new hosts, turning your very presence into a danger to your benefactors. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of exile narratives in Greek heroic myths primarily served as a cultural explanation for the widespread phenomenon of displaced individuals, Jew, refugees from wars, political exiles in the ancient Greek world, reflecting a common social reality, or if these narratives also served a deeper mythological or ethical purpose, exploring the consequences of crime, even unintentional ones, the unforgiving nature of divine judgment, and the profound importance of one's homeland and community for shaping identity and destiny, emphasizing the devastating impact of forced severance from one's roots. Was it about social reality or moral lesson that made exile so common for heroes? Your heroic deeds, once a source of glory, now become a double-edged sword. While your reputation might precede you, offering a chance for temporary employment or a few days of hospitality, it also marks you as a dangerous individual, a magnet for trouble, and a potential target for those seeking to gain favor by delivering you to your enemies. You might find yourself constantly fighting, not just monsters which we'll explore in Section 6, but envious mortals, vengeful rivals, or those seeking to exploit your skills for their own nefarious purposes. The physical hardships of wandering are immense. You endure long journeys on foot or horseback, exposed to harsh weather, hunger, and constant exhaustion. Recall those arduous journeys of medieval pilgrims from Why Being a Priest Was So Brutal. Section 9, or the endless, arduous nature of the Silk Road from Section 2. You sleep in crude shelters, or rely on the meager charity of strangers. Your body perpetually weary, your spirit constantly on edge. The psychological toll is profound. You live with the constant uncertainty of your future, the gnawing guilt even if your crime was unintentional, and the profound grief of being separated from your family and your homeland. Your mind, already strained by your heroic labors, grapples with the injustice of your fate and the constant longing for a home you can never return to. Your identity, so deeply tied to your city-state, slowly erodes in your rootless existence. You feel the cold wind on your face, the dust of unfamiliar roads beneath your feet, and the profound, aching loneliness that comes from being forever adrift, a stranger in every land. You gaze at the distant horizon, hoping for a sign, for a reprieve, but finding only the endless expanse of your banishment. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about fighting monsters. It's about the brutal reality of exile. Your heroic life is consumed by lonely wanderings, transforming your extraordinary deeds into a source of profound personal suffering, ensuring that the heavy price of glory was perpetually paid in banishment, rootlessness, and the chilling knowledge that even the greatest hero could be condemned to a miserable, solitary existence, forever yearning for a home that would never welcome him again. A constant testament to humanity's profound vulnerability when severed from its roots. Even if your heroic life was spared the profound loneliness of exile, or your spirit clung to sanity amidst ceaseless wandering. Your body, as a Greek hero, remained constantly susceptible to another, far more tangible, and utterly agonizing form of suffering: physical wounds. Endless scars, forget the clean. Cinematic injuries of modern portrayals, ancient Greek combat, whether against monsters or mortal foes, was a brutal, visceral affair that left heroes with horrific, debilitating, and often permanently disfiguring wounds, transforming their bodies into maps of agonizing pain and constant reminders of their perilous lives. You quickly learn that glory is bought with agonizing pain, and that every heroic deed leaves an indelible mark, turning your very flesh into a canvas of unending suffering. It's like being a permanent resident of a hospital ward, but all the procedures are incredibly painful. None of them fully work, and every new heroic act just adds to your collection of debilitating injuries. You stand on a battlefield, perhaps after slaying a monster or surviving a brutal skirmish. Your body throbs with pain. You feel a searing cut on your arm, a crushing blow to your leg, or a deep gash on your side. Blood, warm and sticky, flows freely, staining your bronze armor or soaking your linen tunic. The air is thick with the metallic tang of fresh blood, the pungent smell of sweat, and the pervasive odor of fear and suffering. Your primitive medical knowledge recall those primitive, painful treatments from Why You Wouldn't Survive a Day in Ancient Egypt. Section 9 offers little comfort, for you know that even a seemingly minor wound can quickly fester into a life-threatening infection. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of heroic combat is that ancient Greek heroes and warriors consistently sustained severe and often debilitating physical wounds in combat, including deep lacerations, broken bones, internal injuries, and permanent disfigurements, which, due to the lack of modern medical understanding, germ theory, antibiotics, and primitive treatments, frequently led to infection, gangrene, chronic pain, and permanent disability, significantly shortening their lifespans. Their bodies were constantly battered and scarred. Think about it. Your idea of a valiant hero probably doesn't involve him constantly limping or clutching a festering wound. Imagine the immediate aftermath of an injury. A primitive physician or a fellow warrior might try to staunch the bleeding with crude bandages or apply basic herbal poultices. There is no anesthesia, no effective pain relief beyond perhaps some mild herbal concoctions or a swig of diluted wine. Remember that from What Parties Were Like in the Roman Empire. Section 5, which would only dull the very sharpest edges of your agony. You endure the excruciating pain, your body trembling, your screams, if any, lost in the chaos of battle or the desperate murmur of the camp. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the Greeks' practical, yet gruesome, methods of dealing with battlefield wounds is the frequent use of cauterization, searing wounds with a hot iron to stop bleeding and prevent infection, though they wouldn't understand why it worked. Beyond stopping the blood, this immensely painful procedure, performed on an unanesthetized patient, would leave agonizing burns and profound scars. Imagine having a gaping wound, and someone brings a red-hot iron to literally burn the flesh. The smell of your own searing body filling your nostrils, simply to stop you from bleeding to death. Historians still argue whether the Greeks' impressive for their era understanding of battlefield trauma and surgical intervention as evidenced in texts like the Hippocratic Corpus, though often attributed to later periods, was primarily due to extensive empirical observation and practical experience gained from constant warfare, allowing them to develop effective, albeit brutal, techniques for treating specific injuries, or if the lack of widespread anatomical dissection and a deep understanding of internal bodily functions, which was often taboo, ultimately limited their overall medical progress, making their effective treatments rare islands in a sea of pervasive medical ignorance. Was it practical experience or a lack of deeper understanding that defined their medical limits beyond the immediate trauma? The long-term consequences were devastating. Infections were rampant. A seemingly minor cut could quickly fester into a pus-filled wound, leading to sepsis, a systemic infection, or gangrene, the decay of body tissue due to infection, which would spread rapidly through your limb, causing agonizing pain, delirium, and often necessitating amputation, a crude and highly risky procedure, often without anesthesia, and rarely surviving or leading to a slow, agonizing death. Your body, constantly exposed to dirt, sweat, and other contaminants. Remember those from hygiene filth and body odor, from Why You Wouldn't Survive a Day in Ancient Egypt. Section 3 was perpetually vulnerable. Broken bones, if improperly set, could lead to permanent deformities, crippling pain, and a lifetime of disability. Internal injuries, unobservable and untreatable, could slowly kill you over weeks or months. You would bear the marks of your heroism for life, deep scars, missing fingers, a permanent limp, a blinded eye, transforming your body into a living testament to the brutal price of battle. These were not romantic badges of honor. They were grim, painful realities that hampered your ability to fight, to work, and to live a normal life. The psychological toll of constant pain, physical limitations, and the memory of your own mangled flesh would be immense. You would live with chronic aches, phantom pains, and the profound awareness that your body, once a magnificent instrument of heroism, was now a source of perpetual suffering. Your sleep might be disturbed by the throbbing of old wounds or the chilling memory of the agony you endured. You feel the sharp, raw pain of a fresh wound, the dull ache of old scars, and the profound, chilling realization that your body is a battleground, constantly suffering from the brutal realities of your heroic life. You fight through the pain, push your body to its limits, but you know that every glorious deed leaves an indelible mark, a permanent cost inscribed upon your very flesh. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about fighting monsters. It's about the brutal reality of physical wounds. Your heroic life is consumed by endless, debilitating injuries, transforming your body into a canvas of agonizing scars, ensuring that the heavy price of glory was perpetually paid in profound physical suffering, chronic pain, and often a permanent disfigurement. A constant reminder that even immortality and fame came at the brutal, unglamorous cost of a shattered, tormented human body. Even if your body, battered and scarred by endless wounds, somehow clung to life, and you pushed through the chronic pain that defined your heroic existence. Your journey as a Greek hero led to one final, inescapable, and often profoundly unheroic reality: mortality, inevitable end. Forget a glorious, dramatic death in battle, surrounded by adoring throngs. For the vast majority of heroes, their demise was often sudden, unexpected, undignified, or tragically ironic. A chilling reminder that even divine parentage and immense strength could not defy the ultimate boundary of human existence. You quickly learn that your greatest glory is fleeting, but death is absolute, and that your ultimate fate is to become a mere shade in the grim underworld, regardless of your earthly triumphs. It's like being a world-famous athlete who constantly performs superhuman feats, only to die from a silly accident or a lingering illness. Far from the stadium lights, you stand at the pinnacle of your glory, perhaps after completing an impossible labor or winning a great battle. The cheers of the crowd still ring in your ears. Your name is celebrated, your deeds recounted by bards. But a subtle tension lingers, a chilling awareness of the unpredictable nature of fate. Remember that inescapable destiny from Section 3. You, as a hero, are still mortal, and even the gods, for all their power, could not ultimately defy the universal law of death. Your life, however extraordinary, has a predetermined end, often one that comes not in a blaze of glory, but with a quiet, ignoble whimper. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of heroic deaths is that ancient Greek myths frequently depict heroes meeting surprisingly ignoble, accidental, or tragic deaths, often far from the battlefield, due to poison, disease, domestic accidents, or the culmination of a divine curse, rather than always a glorious demise in combat, highlighting the inescapable mortality of even the greatest figures. Their demigod status did not grant them true immortality or an easy end. Think about it. Your idea of a hero's death might be a final, epic showdown. Theirs was often more mundane and profoundly disappointing. Imagine the unheroic ways heroes met their end. Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior, famously fell not in a glorious duel with Hector, but by an arrow to his vulnerable heel, his only weakness. Remember that from Section 2, guided by Apollo, who often involved himself in human wars. Section 9 of Why Being Immortal in Greek Myth Sucked, and had his own arrogant, cruel streak. Section 6 of The Disturbing Truth About Greek Gods. A petty injury, easily avoided, bringing down the mightiest warrior. Hercules, who endured 12 impossible labors, remember those grueling labors from Section 6, finally died from a poisoned tunic. A slow, agonizing death caused by a centaur's vengeful blood mixed by his jealous wife, Deianira, who thought it was a love potion. No mighty enemy defeated him. It was a garment. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the mundane absurdity of some heroic deaths is the myth of Ajax the Greater. After being tricked by Athena into slaughtering a flock of sheep, believing them to be Greek chieftains due to divine madness, remember that terrifying affliction from Section 8. Ajax, consumed by shame upon realizing his delusion, chose to commit suicide by falling on his own sword. Imagine a hero, famed for his strength and bravery, dying not in battle, but from a self-inflicted wound, brought on by a fit of temporary, divinely induced insanity, over a herd of sheep. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of ignoble or tragic deaths for Greek heroes, despite their immense bravery and strength, primarily served as a cultural mechanism for ancient Greeks to explore the inherent limitations of human power and the inescapable nature of mortality, even for those with divine blood, emphasizing that death truly is the great equalizer. Or if these narratives also functioned as a subtle critique of excessive pride hubris. Section 5, or the unpredictable and often cruel whims of the gods, demonstrating that divine favor was fleeting and often led to ironic downfalls. Was it about emphasizing mortality or critiquing divine capriciousness that shaped these unheroic ends? Other heroes met their end in equally disappointing ways. Odysseus, after his 20-year journey home, was eventually killed by his own illegitimate son, Telegonus, with a spear tipped with a stingray spine. An accidental death from an unexpected source, far from the grand battles of the Trojan War. Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, reportedly died when a rotten piece of his old ship, the Argo, fell on his head. A pathetic end for a legendary adventurer. These weren't glorious last stands. They were often quiet, inglorious demises that highlighted the fragility of even the greatest lives. The gods, for all their interventions in a hero's life, could not ultimately defy the universal law of mortality. They might grant fleeting immortality, like granting Hercules godhood after his death. A rare exception. But for most, death was the final, unyielding boundary. The physical wounds accumulated from a lifetime of combat, remember those endless scars from Section 11, would eventually take their toll, even if not directly fatal. Disease, old age, or a simple, tragic accident. These were the common, unheroic paths to the underworld. The psychological impact of knowing your glorious life would end in such an unceremonious way must have been profound. You might strive for Kleos' undying glory, but you know that your body will still become a mere shade. Recall those fading echoes from Section 11 of what Hades was actually like, destined for the bleak underworld Section 12 of what Hades was actually like. The contrast between your vibrant life and your inevitable, grim post-mortem existence would be a constant, chilling reminder of mortality's finality. You feel the cold inevitability of your own end, the subtle ache of your past wounds, and the profound, chilling realization that your heroic deeds, however glorious, cannot ultimately defy the universal law of death. You might die not in a blaze of glory, but from a common illness, a petty accident, or a lingering wound. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about their sufferings. It's about the brutal reality of their mortality. Your heroic life, however extraordinary, is destined for an ultimate, often unheroic, end, transforming your triumphs into a fleeting moment before the inescapable grasp of death, ensuring that the heavy price of divine blood and earthly glory was perpetually paid in a lifetime of suffering, culminating in a final, agonizing, and often tragically ignoble demise. A constant reminder that even the greatest heroes were ultimately mere mortals, subject to the same universal fate as the humblest peasant. Even if your heroic life was spared the ignominy of an unheroic death, and you clung to your last breaths with dignity, your ultimate destiny as a mortal. Even a hero in Greek myths remained a chilling, profoundly depressing reality after life. Bleak shadows. Forget the blissful field of reeds promised by the Egyptians or the glorious Valhalla of the Norse. The Greek underworld was, for most souls, a bleak, shadowy, and uninviting realm. A place of perpetual gloom and dim existence where true joy was rare, purpose was absent, and even the greatest heroes often languished in longing for their vibrant mortal lives. You quickly learn that death is not a release into paradise, but a chilling descent into an eternal, profoundly unsatisfying twilight, turning your final destiny into a source of pervasive dread, a continuation of misery rather than a reward. It's like being promised an eternal vacation, but it turns out to be a very long, very boring, perpetually cloudy stay in a windowless waiting room, where everyone is a bit sad and utterly without purpose. You stand at the edge of the mortal world, perhaps near a dark cave believed to be an entrance to the underworld, or by the desolate banks of a silent river like the Acheron. The air is cold, still, and heavy with a profound sense of finality. You hear no bird song, no human chatter, only the faint, distant lapping of unseen dark waters. Remember those 5 rivers boundaries of death from Section 6 of What Hades Was Actually Like, and the chilling whispers of countless unseen shades. This isn't Hades's vibrant palace, recall Hades, the grim, unyielding ruler from Section 2 of What Hades Was Actually Like. It's the vast, shadowy realm he presides over, a place of countless spirits, where the sun never shines and the concept of time seems to stretch into an endless, monotonous void. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of a glorious afterlife for most Greeks is that the Greek underworld Hades's realm was almost universally portrayed as a bleak, shadowy, and insubstantial existence for the vast majority of souls in the asphodel meadows, characterized by a loss of memory, personality, and purpose, without joy or fulfillment, and was universally dreaded by the living, who explicitly preferred even the briefest moment of mortal life to eternal existence as a shade. Even the greatest heroes found eternal life there profoundly unsatisfying. Think about it. Your idea of paradise is probably not an endless, gloomy field where you barely remember who you are, and you're just a whisper. Imagine the common realm. The asphodel meadows recall that bleak existence from Section 7 of What Hades Was Actually Like. You see countless shades, their forms insubstantial, barely more than fleeting shadows. They drift aimlessly, like autumn leaves blown by a cold wind. Their faces are blank, their eyes devoid of recognition. Most have drunk from the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness from Section 6 of What Hades Was Actually Like, stripping them of their vibrant, mortal memories, their individual personalities, and all the joys, sorrows, and achievements that defined their earthly lives. They exist in a state of profound oblivion, a chilling form of mental death that makes them mere echoes of who they once were, unable to truly connect or remember their past. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the Greeks' profound sense of despair about this common afterlife, even for heroes, is the famous encounter between Odysseus and the shade of Achilles in Homer's Odyssey. When Odysseus, having journeyed into the underworld, remember those mortal visitors, living trespassers, from Section 12 of What Hades Was Actually Like, praises Achilles' status as a great hero even in death. Achilles famously replies that he would rather be the lowliest peasant alive, slaving for another, than king over all the dead in this dreary realm. Recall this poignant lament from Section 1's introduction. To gain enough strength and clarity to speak to Odysseus, Achilles' shade had to drink the blood of a sacrificed animal, a desperate act just to temporarily remember who he was. Imagine the greatest warrior in Greek history explicitly telling you that being a living beggar is better than being a dead king, confirming just how utterly uninviting their afterlife was. Historians still argue whether the bleak portrayal of the Greek underworld and the insubstantial nature of its shades primarily served as a pragmatic deterrent for ancient Greeks, encouraging them to live virtuous and productive lives on earth by making the afterlife undesirable, thereby emphasizing the supreme value of mortal existence. Or if it was also a philosophical reflection on the inherent tragedy of death and the ephemeral nature of human consciousness, acknowledging that even the greatest life eventually fades into insignificance and oblivion, making the afterlife a mirror of mortal decay. Was it about promoting earthly virtue, or simply a grim acceptance of existential fading that shaped the meadows so bleakly? There is no joy here, no purpose, no meaningful activity for most. The shades engage in no meaningful conversation unless temporarily revived by blood. No grand feasts, no heroic endeavors. They simply exist, a vast multitude of forgotten selves, perpetually wandering a gray, monotonous landscape, This profound lack of engagement, this utter absence of meaning, was considered a chilling fate for the ancient Greeks, who valued vivid life, intellectual pursuit, and active participation in society. For those who offended the gods or committed particularly heinous crimes, there were specific areas of Tartarus, a deeper, darker abyss within the underworld, reserved for eternal torment. Remember those eternal torment punishments from Section 8 of What Hades Was Actually Like. But even for the virtuous, for those who lived noble lives, the rewards were often limited to the Elysian Fields, Section 9, of What Hades Was Actually Like. A pleasant, but still somewhat shadowy realm, a far cry from a truly vibrant paradise, and accessible to only a rare few. Even there, shades often yearned for their former lives. The judges of the dead Section 10 of What Hades Was Actually Like, impartial as they were, still condemned the vast majority of souls to the asphodel meadows, not for their sins, but simply because their lives were not exceptional enough to merit true paradise, nor wicked enough to warrant Tartarus. It was the ultimate middle ground, a universal, and universally dreaded, mediocrity. You feel the cold, still air, the profound sense of hopelessness, and the chilling realization that this is what awaits most mortals. You gaze at the blank faces of the wandering shades, knowing that your own memories, your own vibrant personality, could one day fade into such an indistinct shadow, a mere echo of the life you once lived. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about their sufferings in life. It's about the brutal reality of their afterlife. Your ultimate destiny is a grim, uncertain realm, transforming death from a release into a chilling plunge into profound insignificance, ensuring that the heavy price of mortality was paid not just in life's suffering, but in a long, monotonous, and utterly joyless oblivion. A constant reminder of humanity's profound dread of fading into utter meaninglessness in the vast, gray expanse of the Greek underworld, where even your own identity eventually becomes a forgotten whisper. Even if your hero's body somehow found peace in the bleak shadows of the underworld, escaping the eternal torments or the aimless wandering of the shades, your memory, as a mortal in Greek myths, remained tied to a more insidious, pervasive, and profoundly unjust reality: family curses, inherited misery. Forget the glory of being descended from legendary figures. In ancient Greece, being related to a hero or a powerful royal family often brought not just prestige, but a chilling inheritance of divine curses, inherited sins, and multi-generational suffering, transforming your very ancestry into a dangerous legacy that ensured your life, however innocent, would be plagued by misfortune, tragedy, or madness. You quickly learn that your family tree might be rooted in ancient glory, but its branches are perpetually entangled with divine wrath and inevitable calamity, turning your heritage into a constant source of cosmic doom. It's like being born into a family with a secret, invisible disease that systematically tries to destroy everyone, all because of something your great-great-great-grandfather did. And you just have to wait for your turn, knowing you can't escape. You stand in your home, perhaps in Mycenae or Thebes, listening to the bards recount the glorious deeds of your ancestors, a legendary hero who founded your city, a king who achieved great triumphs, a queen whose beauty launched 1,000 ships. You feel a thrill of pride, a connection to ancient greatness, a sense of destiny. But a subtle tension lingers in the air, a chilling understanding that your family's illustrious past is also scarred by a grim, pervasive darkness. Your very bloodline, it seems, carries a curse, an ancient burden passed down through generations, ensuring suffering for the innocent descendants. One mainstream historical fact that utterly shatters any romanticized view of heroic ancestry and the triumph of the individual is that ancient Greek myths frequently depict powerful heroic lineages. Jacques, the Atreidae, the house of Labdacus in Thebes being plagued by multi-generational divine curses, inherited sins, or inescapable tragic fates, leading to relentless cycles of murder, madness, incest, and profound suffering that affected countless descendants, regardless of their individual innocence or actions. Being related to a famous hero often brought not just glory, but an inescapable inheritance of calamity and pervasive suffering, making their very existence a tragedy. Think about it, your family reunion could literally be a cosmic tragedy waiting to happen, where the drama is predetermined. Imagine the relentless cycle of suffering. The house of Atreus, for instance, is one of the most famous and horrifying examples of a cursed lineage. It all began with Tantalus. Remember him from section 14 of What Hades Was Actually Like. Condemned to eternal hunger and thirst for his hubris and for serving his son to the gods, who murdered his son Pelops and served him to the gods. This act initiated a multi-generational curse. His descendant, Atreus, notoriously enacted an unspeakable revenge by tricking his brother Thyestes into eating his own children. This act of unspeakable horror led to further bloodshed. Atreus' son, Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces in the Trojan War, sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia. Remember that horrifying human sacrifice from section 11 of Why Being Immortal in Greek Myths Sucked to appease Artemis. Upon his triumphant return from Troy, he was brutally murdered by his own wife Clytemnestra, who was then murdered by their son Orestes, who was then relentlessly pursued by the Furies for matricide. Generations of murder, incest, and profound suffering, all stemming from an ancient, inherited curse, a terrifying illustration of divine retribution that spanned centuries, proving that the gods' wrath could follow a bloodline indefinitely. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the grim persistence of these curses and the gods' implacable memory for ancient offenses is that even if a family member genuinely tried to break the cycle of violence or atone for past sins, the curse often found a way to manifest, subtly or overtly, dragging them back into the predetermined tragedy, suggesting an almost cosmic inevitability to their suffering. For instance, Orestes, despite being divinely compelled to avenge his father's murder, was still tormented by the Furies, personifications of vengeance, for the act of matricide, highlighting that even justified violence could not escape the curse. Imagine trying your absolute best to be a good person, to escape the shadow of your ancestors' terrible deeds. But because your great-great-grandfather murdered his child and fed him to gods, you're still destined to accidentally marry your mom and kill your dad, or kill your own mother for revenge. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of multi-generational curses in Greek heroic myths was primarily a reflection of deeply ingrained Greek beliefs in the consequences of inherited guilt miasma, a form of spiritual pollution, and the relentless nature of fate Moira, which we discussed in section 10 of Why Being Immortal in Greek Myths Sucked, providing a cultural explanation for recurring misfortunes in powerful families and reinforcing social taboos against heinous crimes. Or if these narratives also served a sociological purpose, subtly critiquing the inherent instability and violence of aristocratic power structures in ancient Greece, highlighting how unchecked ambition and personal feuds could inevitably lead to dynastic self-destruction, regardless of outside influence. Was it about cosmic justice or social commentary that shaped these tales of cursed lineages? The House of Labdacus, ruling Thebes, provides another chilling example of inherited misery. It began with Laius, who violated a divine decree regarding not having a child. His son was Oedipus, famously destined by prophecy to kill his father and marry his mother. Recall that inescapable destiny from Section 3. Despite his parents' desperate attempts to avert the prophecy by exposing him as an infant, and Oedipus's own efforts to flee, fate prevailed, leading to the horrifying fulfillment of the curse, followed by his self-blinding and the tragic deaths of his children, Polynices and Eteocles, who would later kill each other in a battle for the throne, ensuring the curse continued through another generation of bloodshed. The burden of this inherited curse was immense. You might be born into a powerful, prestigious family, destined for greatness, but your glory is perpetually shadowed by the knowledge that your lineage is tainted, that tragedy awaits, and that your own actions, however innocent, might unwittingly fulfill an ancient prophecy or trigger a new calamity. You might try to escape, to live a simple life, to deny your heritage, but the curse, a relentless, often unseen, predator, inevitably finds you, dragging you into a predetermined fate of suffering that often far outweighs any individual sin you might commit. The psychological toll on individuals living under such a curse must have been profound. A constant sense of fatalism, of utter powerlessness against a predetermined doom, would permeate their lives. Every misfortune, every personal loss, every unexpected death would be interpreted as another manifestation of the curse, leading to despair, paranoia, and a grim resignation to an unavoidable tragedy. The notion that you suffer not for your own sins, but for those of a distant ancestor, is a terrifying and deeply unjust reality. You feel the cold weight of your ancestry, the chilling knowledge that your family's glorious past is inextricably linked to a dark legacy of suffering and divine wrath. You look at your children, their innocent faces filled with hope, and you wonder what grim destiny awaits them, simply because of the blood that flows in their veins. The awful truth about the fate of Greek heroes isn't just about fighting monsters or facing betrayal. It's about the brutal reality of family curses. Your very existence is burdened by inherited misery and multi-generational calamities, transforming your illustrious ancestry into a profound source of inescapable suffering, ensuring that the heavy price of ancient glory was perpetually paid in the relentless, tragic cycles of bloodshed, madness, and devastation. A chilling testament to humanity's profound vulnerability when its fate is inextricably linked to the unyielding, unforgotten curses of powerful, flawed divinities. After enduring the perils of divine parentage, the unyielding grip of prophecy, the horrifying consequences of hubris, the brutal vengeance of divine jealousy, the grueling labors against terrifying monsters, the crushing pain of human betrayal, the insidious descent into divine madness, the heartbreaking agony of tragic love, the profound loneliness of exile, the debilitating reality of physical wounds, the inescapable certainty of unheroic mortality, the bleakness of the afterlife, and the chilling burden of family curses and inherited misery. You finally emerge from our journey through the brutal fate of Greek heroes to confront its complex and enduring legacy. Enduring stories. Brutal truth. The myths of ancient Greek heroes, for all their fantastical elements and triumphant moments, were not mere tales. They were the very fabric of Greek understanding, profoundly shaping their worldview, their ethics, their art, and continue to resonate in our own culture, reminding us of humanity's timeless struggles, its profound vulnerability, and the harsh, often painful, realities that underpin even the greatest glory. You realize that the very narratives that define a civilization can be born from the crucible of immense human cost, etching a grim reality into the very fabric of belief and inspiration. It's like looking at a masterpiece of ancient sculpture, perhaps depicting a heroic deed, and realizing its beauty is built on stories of profound tragedy, raw, unfiltered human and divine suffering, and an unyielding fate. You reflect on the vivid contrasts. The glory of heroes like Achilles, Hercules, Perseus, and Theseus is undeniable. Their names synonymous with strength, courage, and triumph over impossible odds. Their deeds are celebrated, their stories recited by bards for millennia. Yet, their lives were almost universally plagued by immense suffering, divine persecution, tragic personal losses, and often an ignoble or agonizing death. The very qualities that made them heroes also condemned them to lives of extraordinary misery, a profound paradox at the heart of their legends. One mainstream historical fact that utterly defines this complex and often tragic legacy is that ancient Greek myths about heroes, despite their often brutal and tragic fates, served as foundational narratives that profoundly shaped Greek understanding of heroism, morality, destiny, and the human condition, influencing their philosophy, art, literature, and social values, and continue to profoundly resonate in Western culture as timeless stories that explore universal themes of power, suffering, justice, and the limits of human agency. Their influence is still felt in countless ways in our own culture. Think about it. Your ideas of heroism, sacrifice, and the enduring struggle against fate often trace their roots back to these brutal ancient tales, even if you don't realize it. Imagine the philosophical reflections these brutal fates inspired. Thinkers grappled with questions of fate versus free will. Remember that inescapable destiny from Section 3. The nature of divine justice. Recall its unpredictable, harsh nature from Section 8. The meaning of suffering and the limits of human power in a cosmos ruled by capricious, flawed gods. The Greek tragedies, which still influence our understanding of drama today, relentlessly explored these themes, often showing how even the greatest heroes were powerless to escape their predetermined doom or the consequences of their pride, hubris. Section 4. A particularly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the Greeks' willingness to find meaning even in extreme suffering and their philosophical interpretation of the afterlife is the concept of a hero achieving immortality. Not necessarily through a blessed afterlife in Elysium, which was rare, Section 9, but through kleos, undying fame and glory, achieved through heroic deeds, ensuring their name would be remembered forever, even if their physical body became a mere shade in Hades. This emphasis on posthumous fame suggests a desire to transcend the limitations of their own brutal fates by living on in the collective memory. Imagine being told your ultimate reward for a life of agony is simply that people will tell stories about you for thousands of years. And that's your immortality. Historians still argue whether the consistent portrayal of brutal and tragic fates for Greek heroes primarily served as a cultural mechanism for ancient Greeks to explore and cope with the inherent harshness, unpredictability, and suffering of human life, allowing them to process universal pain and the inevitability of death. or if these narratives also served a sociological purpose, subtly reinforcing societal hierarchies and promoting humility by portraying the dangers of ambition and the inevitable fall of even the greatest men who challenged the cosmic or social order. Did it provide emotional catharsis, or just enforce social norms that made heroic fates so tragic? The cost of this pervasive mythology was immense. Countless lives, both heroic and innocent, were lost. Generations suffered from curses. Section 14. Individuals were tormented, driven mad. Section 8. Transformed, or obliterated by divine whims. The profound human cost was often unacknowledged in the glorious narratives of heroic triumphs, becoming merely the brutal backdrop for the gods' dramatic interplay. Yet, despite all this brutality, the stories endured. They provided a shared cultural identity, a common understanding of the human condition, and a rich source of inspiration for art, literature, and drama that continues to shape Western thought. The complexity of the heroes, their profound flaws, and their extraordinary struggles against overwhelming forces made them endlessly compelling, even as their fates were terrifying. You stand now, reflecting on this ancient world of larger-than-life figures, realizing that their enduring power lies not just in their mythical deeds, but in their raw, unfiltered humanity and the profound suffering they endured. The awful truth about the brutal fate of Greek heroes is precisely what makes their legacy so powerful. It is the constant struggle against overwhelming, often capricious, divine forces, the inherent unfairness of fate, and the profound vulnerability of human life that provides the grim, powerful backdrop to stories that continue to enthrall us, forever linking humanity's greatest achievements and deepest suffering to the unpredictable, often terrifying, and profoundly tragic destinies of its most celebrated champions. Their enduring tales serve as a permanent reminder of the immense cost of glory, and the inescapable truth that even heroism often ended in profound pain, a brutal and captivating testament to the enduring power of myth to reveal human suffering. Now, as the thunder of Olympus fades and the echoes of ancient heroic struggles grow quiet, let the stillness of your room embrace you. The divine curses, the monstrous labors, the heartbreaking betrayals, and the brutal fates of Greek heroes are safely in the past, part of a history that now dissolves into the gentle hum of your fan. You've journeyed through a world where even glory came at an unbearable price, and now it's time for you to find your own peaceful rest. Let your mind unwind, your muscles relax, and sink into a deep, undisturbed sleep, far from the tragic destinies of ancient heroes. End of script. Sweet dreams.